there, I'm Penny and you are on Open Hand Farm. Today I have some kombucha that I need to bottle up for the second fermentation, and I found a recipe for pumpkin spice kombucha. I know some of you are pumpkin spice haters, but I'm not. So I want to give this a whirl. I've already done my first fermentation of kombucha. I've grown a nice little SCOBY on top there. So I have 2 gallons of the liquid, but I will leave most of the second gallon as my SCOBY hotel. If you don't know what in the world I'm talking about, what a SCOBY is, what a SCOBY hotel is, I have a video that teaches you how to make kombucha, and I explain all of that stuff to you. I will put a card here as well as a link in the description box so that you can catch up and then come back and see how to do the second fermentation. These are the bottles I'm going to be using, and they have a flip top lid. And the purpose for that is to hold the pressure in the bottle, because kombucha does get fizzy in its second fermentation. So sometimes if you're not careful, when you open these, you might get a little champagne effect and it kind of spew out a little bit. But that's only if you let it sit too long and get too fizzy. This is my kombucha. Like I said, I have 2 1-gallon jars full. This one is going to be my SCOBY hotel. And the SCOBY has fallen down here that was made while I made this kombucha. And there are the bits and pieces that I used from a really thick SCOBY to start this one. So I'm going to take the SCOBY out of this one. Whoops, it slid away on me. I have clean hands. Let me show you this nice, pretty SCOBY. And I'm gonna put it down in the hotel. I also have some chunks in the bottom of this one that I started this with because I had a very thick SCOBY that I could not peel apart. And I'm gonna go ahead and put their parts in there, and it will grow even more SCOBYs in there. All right, I think I have all the SCOBYs out of this one. So I'm going to set this one aside, and we might use some of it, but we'll use what's in this jar first. The first thing I need to do is pour some of this into a jar that is easier to pour from. So I'm just gonna use my stainless steel funnel. I have people question the fact that I use stainless steel with my kombucha and with my sourdough, and I have had no problems with that. Now, before we put the kombucha in the bottles, we're going to add a sugar source that will feed the kombucha for its second fermentation. I normally use fruit juice for that, but today we're going to use crystallized ginger. And this has sugar on the outside of it. It's just kind of flattened ginger, and I cut it into small pieces. We're gonna put about 4 little pieces in each bottle, and that is gonna be our sugar source. I'm not being absolute accurate. I'm just kind of gathering about 4 and sticking them in there. I asked Mark if he wanted to try these, and he thought it was something. It was very strong and yet sweet at the same time. I think this candied ginger would actually be really good if you had a cough. So it would work kind of like a cough drop. I'm just adding a couple more in because I have them. The recipe calls for cubed ginger, so I guess they're cut into little blocks. but we couldn't find that. So mine were more flat pieces like this. So I just cut it into smaller bites. Now the next item we're going to add in here is a pinch of pumpkin pie spice. Now I don't know what a pinch is, and I want them to kind of be the same. So I'm gonna use 1/8 of a teaspoon. That's one thing you need to think about. If you want them to taste consistent, you need to make sure you use the same measurements. That's why I went back and put a few more ginger pieces in, because some of them had gotten a little bit more than others. Then we're going to add 1/4 of a stick of cinnamon. Now I'm gonna kind of line these up better so that I will be able to tell what row I have put things in and do it more accurately. So this says 1/4 of a stick. So I'm using my kitchen shears and just kind of cutting these. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of divide this evenly because this was 1/2 of a stick. So this is 1/4. Let's start on this row over here. I'm just gonna put all those pieces in there. Then go to the next one. Some of these might not fit in the jar, so I have to kind of crack them open. I've never made kombucha with stuff like this in it. I've just always used juices. This is really interesting. Now we're going to add a whole clove to each jar. If you've never seen a clove, they're very tiny little stick-like things. So we're going to add 1 of those. I love the smell of cloves and the taste. All right. Now we're going to add an allspice berry. I had just recently bought these to make homemade ketchup with. Oh, they smell so good. 1/8 teaspoon of vanilla. When I'm doing little bitty measurements, I prefer putting it in a bowl and scooping that small amount out instead of pouring it. Now we just need one last item, the kombucha. I usually only fill mine to the shoulder of the bottle because if it gets fizzy, that way it has more room to fizz up on me and not explode. The smell's delicious. Very yummy. As I pour the rest of this in, I'm going to use this little strainer because we're at the end of the jar, so there's some little chunks and pieces of SCOBY in there. And I just want to kind of filter them out. All right, we're going to have to go ahead and get some from our hotel, which is fine. Now we're going to close our bottles. So we lift this little lid up with the little bitty spout thing down, and then we clip that down until you hear a click. And that one's done. If you don't have these jars, I know people who use empty store-bought kombucha jars to put their kombucha in. They have their friends save them and reuse them, and that seems to work well for them. You can also just put it in a mason jar with a tight lid, but you want to watch it because it can pop that lid off if you do the second fermentation too long. So let's talk about how long is too long. You want to start checking your kombucha after day 2. And what you'll do is you'll open it up and just see if it's fizzy. You'll hear it kind of fizz out. You'll see some air kind of come out, and that means you've got a good fizz and a good fermentation. If you do not have it on day 2, you'll continue up to day 10. But remember, you do not want to leave them too long, because if they get too fizzy, they can be a little disastrous. I have had one pop open and spew all over my ceiling, and that is no fun. Now, once you have fermented them and they're at the fizziness that you like, you're going to put them in the refrigerator. They will still continue to ferment. It will just be at a much slower rate. But you do not want to leave them in a warm place, or they will just continue until they burst, or until they burst when you open it. So I'm going to put these back in a box, put them back in my pantry where it's nice and warm and dark, and let them sit for 2 days. Then I will pull a couple of them out and test them, and I'll show you what we find. It's been 2 days, so we're going to open this bottle and see if we see or hear a fizz. There was a tiny little bit. I don't know if you can see the line here where the liquid is. It's got a little bit of white fizziness on top, but I don't think we're there yet. Okay, my kombucha has still not gotten fizzy. I let it sit for 2 days, checked it, nothing. I let it sit for another 2 days, checked it, and there were just like a couple of little bubbles. So I wondered if I needed to add more of the candied ginger to add more sugar to it. So I took the pieces that are kind of little ovals, and I just took scissors and cut them into strips and put a strip in each bottle. So that was 2 days ago. We're gonna check and see what we've got. Okay, when I open it, we want to hear a fizz and see it kind of move up with bubbles. Still nothing. Can you see just a slight amount? Actually, it's a lot more than there was. Actually, that's looking pretty good. I know the light is weird for you, but this white line that you see, that is fizzing. Okay, that's good. Let's try another one. I always pick one from each side of the box in case one side of the box is warmer than the other. Well, yep, there's fizz coming up on it too. Do you see that white? I think we did it. Okay, now I'm gonna taste it. Because of all the things we added in the bottle, we're gonna strain it as we pour it, and I hope we get a good fizz in it. I don't see a lot of bubbles. Usually I'll see bubbles. That's why I like to do it in glass. Oh, I do see some. Do you see those bubbles there? And the bubbles around the top. All right, I'm gonna just taste it and see if I feel like it's fizzy enough. If not, I'll just wait another day. Okay. It's got some fizz, but I could definitely use some more. But the flavor, it's delicious. I think if it had more fizz, I would taste the flavor more. We're gonna go another day. So I also wondered if my house was just too cold for it to really ferment, because we don't turn our heat on until it gets cold, real cold. So this is what I did to give it a little bit more heat. See the sunshine coming in that door and shining on that box? That's where it's been the last 2 days. So it might have gone ahead and gotten fizzy without me adding more ginger. I think it was probably adding the ginger as well as adding the heat. So we'll check tomorrow and see how they are. It's the next morning and we're gonna try this kombucha again. Okay, we're gonna listen for a fizz. I didn't hear one. It might just be the type of items that I'm putting in this. I've never done it like this before. Now that one popped pretty good and is starting to fizz. See that white line? So here's the truth of the matter. I'm done with this project. I did taste it yesterday and it has some fizz to it and the flavor is really good. So I'm gonna call that a win. I don't know if using more ginger next time will do a better job, but I'm pleased with the results that I have with it being so different than what I usually do. So we're gonna call this a win and enjoy our pumpkin spice kombucha. Thanks so much for coming along with me on this long project. I hope you give it a try and see how it works for you. I will link the recipe in the description box, so let me know if you do try it, how it worked. And until next time, blessings on you and yours.